Good morning, boys and girls of the internet. Today is Thursday, July 19th, 2018. Log number 199. 199. Pretty badass, if you ask me. Tomorrow, be vlog number 200. It's not an insignificant number. It's pretty good. Didn't think I'd make it this far, but I made it. So for today, thinking about, kind of feeling nostalgic. They're rebooting She-Ra. So yeah, that's the thing. No comment on that. Never really watched She-Ra as a kid. So it was aimed for girls. Oh well. I've already voiced my opinion about Thundercats. So everything old is new again. No one has original ideas anymore. Might as well reboot old things because nostalgia sells. Kind of makes me wonder though, when they do that, a lot of people, especially like the creators of these newer reboots, they're all like, oh, well, we're taking this in a direction that's all our own because, this is for a new generation. This isn't for the people who really grew up with it. It's not? All right, on some level, don't aim at the people who grew up with it because that's going to be a smaller market because not everybody who grew up with those things are nostalgic for it and will want newer ones or want to even watch it ever again because they have normal adult lives. They watch those cartoons and stuff as kids, but they don't really care either way. So the percentage of people who actually care is very small. Now, so of course they aim it at kids. But they have to kind of expect that some people are going to be older and actually care. So it always blows my mind that they don't even consider the old fans. They don't even consider them. And sometimes these bold-faced, come out with that and they say it. Like, we didn't consider the original fans. It was just... But it's funny is the people who are rebooting this stuff, they claim that they are original fans of the, older series. Like, I grew up with it too, and I just loved it. So I just want to kind of have the opportunity to make it my own. Well, if you claim you're such a fan of the original, why are you fucking it up? I don't know, maybe like... I don't know. That's not the subject I want to talk about today. I was just, like I say, I was feeling nostalgic. And it made me think that about how much I used to play all these old video games and stuff. And I'm an old school gamer. Through and through. I love old school games. Of course, I'm at my age, I just don't have the time to really play games, period. Much less old school games. But like I said, I'm a child of the 80s. Born in 79. But I consider myself a child of the 80s. My first true video game console was Atari 2600. Like a lot of people in the 80s. Technically, my first one, even before that, before I knew what a video game even was, it was my dad bought, I think when I wasn't even born yet, was a knockoff Pong system. This was called Lloyd's TV Sports. It had your Pong, but it also had badminton, which is exactly like Pong. But also was, I think, probably they existed before, but the only one I can, to all my research, couldn't find that had an actual light gun with it, because it had like 2 shooting games with it. And you gotta remember, old school Pong, that's all you had on it. It's the only game you had was Pong. But this one had little switches, like 4 switches on it. They switched to like 4 different variations of a little square block bouncing on the screen. But the shooting one, you shot the square block instead of bouncing between paddles. And the gun was cool because it was like a pistol, but it came the whole system came with a long barrel and a stock that you could put on it. Basically made it a rifle. Well, that was pretty cool back then. And it was like I said, it was a piece of junk knockoff Pong system. But we played it when we were a kid just for this, just to kind of fool around. But at the same time when we were playing that, when my dad brought that out of the closet, we had the Atari, me and my brother. And then, after the Atari system, after the video game crash, of course we still played Atari. We just military for whatever had. But then all of a sudden, the NES came out. We had to get an NES, of course. So I remember we got that for Christmas one year. That was great. Love old school NES games. Super Mario Brothers 3. That was the shit. I love that fucking game. Old school Final Fantasy. Mega Man. Love Mega Man. One game I remember from the past that I didn't actually own when I was young. My friend owned it, and even when I used to sleep over his house, we used to play it all night long. We would take turns. It was our RPG by the name of Destiny of an Emperor. It was basically a Romance of the Three Kingdoms type game, set in ancient China. You got your Lu Bu and your Shao Ti and all that, all the famous, romance names of back then, Three Kingdoms name. But this game was cool because your characters, they didn't refer to them as having hit points. You had your generals, and your HP was your armies. So when you gained experience, when you leveled up, you gained soldiers for your army. I mean, it was basically HP anyways, and they had the battle systems were kind of skirmishes. All they were just the names and the meters, going across each other and just they flash when they attack each other. So it wasn't so super animated and intense, but for some reason I loved that game. I never ever beat it though, because it was a hard game and I got stuck in it because there was a point in the game where you didn't exactly know where to do, and this is way before you can even research what the hell to do. But yeah, that's one game I've always wanted to beat. A couple years ago, I had an emulator that I had on my phone, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna download the Destiny of an Emperor emulator. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna beat it. Didn't happen. I played for a couple hours, and that's it. I kind of forgot about it. Oh well, maybe I'll do that again. Anyway, going back to the old school video games. I mean, I used to play so many old NES games. Punch Out, Excite Bike. Oh, I love Excite Bike. Not so much for the racing part of it. Yeah, I love that part, but I loved creating. I guess that was some of the earliest games that let you create things. It had a track editor in it, and you can put your ramps and your bumps and your skids and all kinds of things all over that game. It was just cool. What other games? I mean, there were so many NES games that I loved back then. Contra was an awesome game. Hard as shit. Original Metal Gear games. Gear 2 Solid Snake. The other game was a piece of shit. That was such a stupid cash in. What else did I like? I could probably, if I sat here and really thought about it, there's probably like, a few dozen other NES specific games I used to love. But fast forward a couple of years till 16-bit wars started to happen. And me and my brother, we were like, okay, we're going to get rid of our Nintendo, we're going to trade it in, and get us a new system. We had the Genesis and the Super Nintendo that was out at the time. What do we choose? And I think I want to blame Pizza Hut for this, because Pizza Hut had an arcade Golden Axe. So we chose the Genesis for Golden Axe. The Genesis we got had Alter Beast in it with it, but we bought Golden Axe at the time. And me and my brother loved the shit out of that. God, I love my Genesis. And that was a turning point for me. I became a Sega fan at that point. Like, all those Sega games were so cool to me. And, Golden Axe, Altered Beast, and the 16-bit graphics are so intense at the time. And then, when Sonic came out, this is way I got the Genesis before the first Sonic the Hedgehog game came out. When Sonic came out, that game was freaking awesome. Sonic 2, of course, was still my favorite. I wasn't great about Sonic 3 for some reason. But, and they had awesome RPGs on the Genesis as well. One of my all-time favorites was Shining Force. I love Shining Force. It was like a strategy RPG, kind of. But I just love that game because that was at a time when I was kind of getting interested in anime. I didn't know much about anime. I didn't know really what anime was. This is like early '90s. But Shining Force had a lot of anime character designs, and what I liked about it too was when you had your characters battle, it had a really cool cutscene that it did for each character, and it was just badass. And you also when you level up your characters, you can awaken them, and they got even cooler then. Fuck, I love Shining Force. I remember the tune to this day. It's always in my head. Anyway. Another RPG that I loved on Genesis was Phantasy Star. They made a few for Genesis. A lot of them were good. But Phantasy Star 4 was my favorite. Because that one, they really had, went in deep with their, anime-style cutscenes. And, the story was pretty intriguing. It was pretty cool. It wasn't like a Final Fantasy where, it was, fantasy elements, Hobbit, or Lord of the Rings derived. Phantasy Star had a lot to do with space and, technology and stuff, but yet it was an RPG. Which didn't have too many of those back then, of a sci-fi RPG. Forgotten Worlds, that was an awesome game on Genesis as well. It was a shooter, a side-scroller shooter, but two Rambo type dudes that they kind of floated on the screen. They had little jetpacks or something. They kind of just floated. They didn't really have jetpacks, but you shoot in any direction. That was a cool game. What else was good? I've always wanted a Sega CD. A buddy of mine, or a friend of my brother's actually, I knew of him. He brought over his Sega CD, and he had the old school system Sega CD. They made another one later on that sat on the side of Genesis. The old school one sat in the bottom, and he had imported Sonic CD for it. and that shit blew my mind. The music to that game was so amazing. I love like it even had like an anime opening, like full like FMV, full motion video we used to call it back then. It was just a cartoon, like just a straight up anime opening. So that was badass. It freaking blew my mind. But the Sega CD was a failure ultimately. There was a couple of really cool games for it. Afterburner was an awesome game, also on the Genesis, and they've made a Sega CD version of it. It was like a little bit fancier looking. I loved like the arcade version of Afterburner too, especially like the big ones that were like it had like full control, like motion of the whole cabinet moved. That shit was so badass. God, I'm like missing so many games that are really cool back then, but I'm just kind of like strolling through nostalgic lane right now. 16-bit days, those were the days. Later on, we did eventually get a Super Nintendo, only because when my buddy brought over his Super Nintendo, same guy who had the Sega CD, he brought over some import Super Nintendo games, and one of them was Dragon Ball. It was Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 2. And from then till now, I've been a Dragon Ball fan. That was my conversion to loving Dragon Ball, and that was also the time where I fell in love with Gohan. I've been a Gohan fan ever since, because in that game, I was really good with Gohan. I became really good with Gohan. He just became my favorite. Of course, in that game, in Super Butoden 2, the main story mode was the Cell Saga. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't see Dragon Ball, but I still played through the story mode. It was all in Japanese. You couldn't tell what the hell was going on, but I still played through it. I just kind of like, they only gave you like a few options to choose here and there, but I eventually kind of memorized what's the better options. Like as I went through it multiple times, I tried the different paths. Like every path I tried to go, like, okay, so there's like 4 things to choose, in this cutscene, to choose this one, this one, this one, and this one, or something, just kind of work my way through it. I kind of remember which ones I already did, so I tried different ones next time. That was back when, like, playing a story mode in a fighting game, only took like a half hour of gameplay. I did like the Super Nintendo though, not as much as I like my Genesis. I love I love Final Fantasy 3, or 6 in Japan, but Final Fantasy 3 was one of my all-time favorite Final Fantasies, up until like way later when 12 came out. I still say 3 is still one of my favorites. 6, sorry. That's still one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. I love the Mega Man X games, especially the first Mega Man X. I played the shit out of that game. Street Fighter, gotta love Street Fighter. Super Nintendo obviously had a better version of Street Fighter. Genesis had a better version of Mortal Kombat because they could have blood. Gotta have the blood from Mortal Kombat. If you don't have blood from Mortal Kombat, it's not Mortal Kombat. You're just pretending. What else is good? So many good games. Like I said, I could compile a whole list of awesome games. I'm not even get into the 32-bit era. I'm up to the 16-bit era. So maybe I'll do that for like tomorrow for the 200th. I'll like start talking about more about my favorite video games that I can remember. Because I didn't make a list of stuff. I just came to my mind. If I sat down and made a list of all the awesome games I loved, and I know I'm forgetting a bunch of them right now, this video would be, an hour long, and I can just talk about them all for an hour. So I'm not going to make a super long video this time, so that's about it for today. I'll talk to y'all later.